Our next speaker is Dave Pernitz. Dave, he's been in sales and management for a long time, for like about 10 years. Has recently decided to kind of get into the tech industry. He's a current student at Turing. This is Dave's first time presenting at a meetup, which we're super excited about. Thank you for choosing us. Thanks for being here, Dave. Dave's going to give us this presentation, which I think is really interesting from his past experience doing management and sales. He's going to give us his talk. Selling the Jamstack, and I think that's really important talk in kind of this current industry where Jamstack is a big name, but it's kind of hard to convince people right now what the value is for them. So I'm really excited to hear from Dave. Dave, go ahead and take it away. Over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Thomas. Let me get set up here real quick. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dave Pernitz, and this is Selling the Jamstack. First off, I want to say thank you to Nick and all of the Jamstack Denver meetup organizers for the opportunity to present tonight, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. So, you are in the early stages of planning, and based on the technical requirements, you know that the best way to build your site or application is with the Jamstack. But there is a decision maker. Maybe a project manager, a client, or a customer that is not convinced. This presentation will hopefully help you with that situation and moving forward with the Jamstack. Quick overview of what we'll be diving into. First, I want to take a look at what sales is and what it is not in order to reframe the way you might be thinking about sales. Next, we'll talk about some sales tools and ideas that you can apply whether you're selling the Jamstack or a bottle of grape jam. Finally, we'll dive into how you can actually use these tools specifically with the Jamstack in mind, including handling some common objections. But first, who is this guy? Well, as Thomas mentioned, I'm new to software development in the Jamstack. About 2 years ago, I started to dabble in some programming self-learning, spent a semester in an online CS program before finally ending up at Turing, where I'm currently a front-end engineering student. Prior to Turing, I graduated from the University of Wisconsin with an economics degree, and I've been in the sales and sales management industry for the last 10 years. In my time, I've learned a lot about the sales process and would even consider myself a slightly above average salesperson. I believe that sales can mean a variety of things, some of which are actually positive. With that segue, let's first take a look at what sales is not. Do any of you cringe a bit when you hear the word sales? I sometimes do. It's a word with some pretty negative connotations these days. Often we associate sales with a relentless telemarketer or a fast-talking door-to-door knife salesperson or a greasy car salesperson. Unfortunately, fast-talking, high-pressure, sleight-of-hand practices do exist and are often associated with sales in general. But sales does not have to be like this. Sales does not have to be something you do to somebody, manipulating or asserting power over someone, or taking advantage of someone. What is sales then? Selling is a mutual exchange of value. It is something you do for and with others. It is aligning needs with values, which is much more important than techniques or strategies that fool. From the book Integrity Selling for the 21st Century, Ron Willingham quotes, "Integrity selling is a win-win customer-focused process driven by honesty and sincerity, creating mutual value for sellers and buyers." Now, I trust that you are all honest and sincere people, so our aim here is to create mutual value for sellers and buyers. By selling the Jamstack, we create value for us as developers, as well as those we are developing for. The first tool I want to discuss tonight is Feature Benefit Impact, or FBI. Explain a feature and connect it directly to your target. At a high level, feature is what it does. What it is. Benefit is what it does. And impact is what it will do for them, or how that specifically helps in this situation. The feature and benefit are important, but the impact is what does the selling. Let's take a quick look at a non-technical example. If you are like me, you love a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if you are like me, you are terrible at getting the jelly out of the jar and on the bread. Jelly is slippery, and inevitably it ends up all over the counter. Enter squeezable bottles. Now, our feature here is a bottle you can squeeze. The benefit? One of many, really. I could go on for days. It injects the jelly directly onto the sandwich. No knives or sticky hands needed. Our impact is you can spend more time coding or learning to speak Arabic or whatever you do by not having to clean the mess of jelly. Seriously, these are awesome. The next tool I want to look at is an acronym for knowing your audience. Knowing your audience is one of the most important parts of sales or really any presentation. The acronym WISDOM is taken from the Pragmatic Programmer and is a great acronym for knowing and preparing for your audience. Just like many areas in life, preparation is key to a sales presentation. Even just 5 to 10 minutes spent thinking about these can be super helpful in tailoring the tone and content of your presentation. I'm not going to dive in depth into each of these points, but I do want to highlight a couple. First off, what is their interest? This is often a hard question to answer, but important to ask yourself beforehand. Do they care about the entire process or just the end result? What will be their level of involvement throughout the project? How sophisticated are they? What is their technical background? This is very important as you will want to tailor your conversation to their level. If you are talking with someone whose technical background is limited, maybe you want to think of analogies you can use to help explain things, or possibly find or create an appropriate diagram. If you strictly talk in technical terms that they don't fully understand, you will lose their attention quickly and possibly your chance to be working with the Jamstack. On the other hand, if you are speaking with someone who has a strong background in the technical areas you will be discussing, it would be inappropriate and perhaps insulting to use simple analogies. In the event you are presenting to multiple people with varying degrees of sophistication, your job is to toe the line. Start at a high level, but give specific technical reasons and examples. Finally, how much detail do they want? This question has a lot to do with the type of person you will be working with, as well as how much trust there is between the two of you. If it is someone who trusts you and is confident in your abilities, they may want a quick, high-level overview. If this is a client who has had bad experience with developers in the past, they may want to know everything. This question also ties into how sophisticated are they in regards to how much technical details you will want to give. The wisdom questions are a great tool for selling the Jamstack as well as presentations in general. The final tool I'd like to share is one for handling objections. Objections are part of the sales process and you should welcome them. Very rarely will you make a pitch and then hear, yeah, that sounds great. Objections will typically stem from a lack of understanding. As Brian Tracy states, treat objections as requests for more information. Don't think of objections as a firm, no, this is not the route I want to go, but instead as a, I'm interested in what you said, but still not 100% clear on the details. Steps to handling objections. First off, listen and clarify. Listen to exactly what they are saying and how they are saying it. If you are unclear on anything, ask clarifying questions before moving on. Switch roles for a second and think about a time when you had been explaining a product or feature, and before you can finish your objection, the other person interrupts you and starts answering a different question than the one that you asked. Super frustrating. Ask clarifying questions and isolate the actual objection or lack of understanding. Acknowledge. That's a great question. That's something I hear all the time. Many of my clients share the same concern when first talking about X. Those are all great ways to acknowledge their objection. Acknowledging not only shows that you are truly listening to them, but also sets them at ease and shows that you are comfortable with their concern, even if they are not. Respond. Respond directly. Don't change the subject or bring up other features. Answer their question and help them bridge the lack of understanding. Be very careful with tone here. And finally, confirm. In a very polite way, confirm that you covered every part of their objection. Does that make you feel better about X? Did I cover everything? Can I dive deeper into anything I just brought up? At this point, they will let you know if there was anything you didn't cover. It is also a great time to ask if there are any other concerns or objections. If so, start back at step one. Now that we've gone over some of the sales basics, let's put those to use with the Jamstack. Looking at the Jamstack, 4 main features are often brought up: speed and performance, cost and ease of scaling, increased security, and the developer experience. As you get more specific and dive deeper, there are a ton of other features, but these will give us a good starting point to use our feature benefit impact tool. Let's take a quick look at how FBI can be used with each of these. For speed and performance, we will focus on the reliability aspect of performance. Our feature, by building with the Jamstack, you increase the reliability of the site by removing server-side parts. Our benefit, there's less chance of a costly problem due to infrastructure issues. And our impact, you can save money and have peace of mind by not having to worry about site crashes or downtime. Great analogy from the Snipcart blog. A dynamic site is like a 6-story house of cards, more vulnerable to collapse because it has more parts, more complexity to its structure. A static site, on the other hand, make it a 1-story house of cards. For scaling, one feature with CDNs, an increase in site traffic is handled automatically with no issues. Benefit, this not only saves money, but is also easier to plan for. And our impact, instead of spending time trying to forecast and predict future site traffic, let the elasticity of the CDN handle it when and how it actually happens. For security, feature, by design, Jamstack architectures offer fewer points of attack, or simply there is a smaller surface attack area. Our benefit, the site is inherently more secure than a traditional site. And our impact, this will save you money on security measures and give you peace of mind that you won't have to deal with the many costs of a major security breach. Direct costs such as the cleanup, security patches, cost of any information lost, legal costs if necessary. Also the indirect costs of the company's brand name and reputation. Think of an e-commerce site or a bank that gets headlines for losing personally identifiable information in a security breach. No bueno. And last but not least, let's take a look at the developer experience. As a side note, this probably shouldn't be the first thing you bring up in order to sell the Jamstack, but depending on the audience, it could be useful. A feature, developers don't have to spend their time on infrastructure management, but instead can focus on developing. Benefit, this leads to happier developers. And our impact, with happier developers, there will be less turnover and therefore less money spent on training and onboarding. Also, more likely than not, happier developers will produce better quality work. Now that we have gone through some examples of FBIs for the Jamstack overall benefits, let's take a quick look at how FBI could be used when looking at some specific technologies. Using a Git-based version control system like GitLab, our feature, all files and versions are retained. Benefit, automatically provides a highly reliable offsite backup. And impact, any errors or changes can be undone or quickly corrected, limiting their impact. Using a static site generator like Gatsby, feature, you can use a starter as a boilerplate for the site, which means less time spent on configuration and tooling, more time spent on actually developing the important stuff. And using Netlify to host the site, a feature is continuous deployment is automatic with a connected Git repository. Our benefit, Netlify automatically builds and updates with new commits. And our impact, again, more time spent on developing and less on configuring. Now let's look at some of the common objections for using the Jamstack. First off, how is this different than what we've been using? Or I need insert feature and the Jamstack cannot provide it. And finally, I need to handle dynamic features on my site. First off, how is this different? The first thing you need to answer here is different than what? Most likely they are referring to something along the lines of a WordPress site. After first listening, clarifying, and acknowledging this objection, I would recommend using some sort of infographic to help explain. If we look back to knowing your audience, most likely this question is coming from someone who may have a limited technical background. Personally, infographics have been huge in my learning process with the Jamstack. There are plenty of them out there, but often simple is better. The image here quickly shows a difference in complexity between a traditional site and a Jamstack site. You could explain how a CDN works in detail, or just that it cuts down the distance and therefore time it takes to get the content. Services and APIs are reusable, customizable, and flexible to fit your specific needs. From here, you can dive in and give more detail if needed. Looking at static versus dynamic, Again, you could go into a ton of detail on how a static site differs from a dynamic site, how they're developed and delivered. However, it is probably enough to say that with the evolution of services and APIs, most users would not know the difference between using a dynamic or a static site these days, except for the fact a static site will be much faster to use, will be more reliable, and more secure. If they're still hung up on the word static, just show them some examples of static sites that are hyperdynamic. The jamstack.org/examples has roughly 100 examples of sites built with the Jamstack. They cover a wide range of site types and include a list of technologies used. Open one up and let them see just how static the sites are for themselves. Now let's look at some examples of specific features that could be brought up. I need to manage payments and subscriptions. Well, there are many recurring billing subscription management services to choose from, including Chargebee, Stripe, and Recurly. Recurly provides tools to manage payments, subscriptions, as well as acquire new customers. It also provides monitoring and tracking tools so you can identify areas of opportunity. I need user authentication. Auth0 provides universal login, single sign-in, and multi-factor authentication, among other features. Their user management allows you to add and remove users, modify authorization attributes, and help to identify login issues. Auth0 also allows you to customize the authentication process by adding rules to fit your specific needs. I need e-commerce. Snipcart allows you to add a cart platform that covers tons of e-commerce needs. There are payment gateway options including Stripe, PayPal, and Square. Payments are accepted in multiple currencies. You can even manage sales tax automatically by location. Snipcart also provides support for physical as well as digital goods. Shipping solutions include FedEx, USPS, and UPS. For inventory management, there's real-time in-cart notifications when something is out of stock. Snipcart also provides a dashboard with detailed analytics to track sales and find areas of opportunity, offers options for promo codes and coupons, sends automatic email invoices on purchase, and allows customer profiles to be built into the site. I need dynamic features. Well, we just covered several dynamic features that people may not associate with a static site, but the options for services and APIs is endless. Since 2015, there's been an average of 2,000 new APIs added each year, and although a random Chuck Norris fact or a pirate translation API might not be the exact service that they were looking for, there are a lot of useful ones that meet a variety of needs. For any given dynamic feature X that may be brought up, most likely there's an API for that. Recapping what we just went over, I believe the most important things are that the biggest obstacle to overcoming and selling the Jamstack is simply a lack of understanding. Selling is the process of bridging the knowledge gap and helping them understand. There are many tools to bridge the knowledge gap. The acronym WISDOM is a great tool for knowing and preparing for your audience. Feature, benefit, impact is a simple yet powerful way to explain a feature and connect it directly to a stakeholder. And handling objections with the steps of 1, listen and clarify, 2, acknowledge, 3, respond, 4, confirm is an easy process to follow when any objection comes up. Finally, it is important to note that you need to understand when the Jamstack is not the right choice. Don't force it. The technical decision should result from the project needs and not the other way around. And that is it for selling the Jamstack. I hope these tools will help you all in your quest to spend more time working with the Jamstack, or at the very least, open your eyes to the benefits of a squeezable bottle of jelly. Thanks again to the meetup organizers and to everyone out there for listening.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was a great talk. I really appreciate I didn't expect you to teach me how to be a salesperson, and that was fantastic because you gave me all these tools, and that was awesome. You mentioned at the very end, kind of knowing when Jamstack isn't right. Have you come across any of those? And particularly if you've been trying to convince people of the Jamstack, do you have any examples of like, okay, this really isn't a good fit for you? I've had a lot of great examples of the opposite, but I want to hear your experience.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Thomas. And to be honest with you, this presentation for me is a little bit of kind of a high level overview. I have not actually been, I would say, in the war room trying to physically sell the Jamstack. So a lot of the stuff I had to reach out and do some research, talking to folks, which the Jamstack community has been great, reaching out to people on the Slack channel, messaging folks directly has been great in kind of getting their experience. But I think a couple areas where it might not be the right choice is very large sites, that have hundreds or thousands of pages might be difficult to manage with the Jamstack, although based on talking to folks, it's not entirely impossible. As well as, some fully dynamic sites where the content of certain pages, can't be known or generated up front. Something like a user admin panel has been brought up before. But I think as we kind of move towards the future, that list is going to, continue to get smaller and smaller.
Yeah,
Great.
That's a great point.
All right. So we got Mick Jeets asking, can you share any experience of convincing someone set in their ways, like a crusty old software architect, to try something not as tried and true like the Jamstack? What did or didn't help you in the success of this sale?
Yeah, kind of speaking generally to that, I've had similar situations many times. A lot of times I would say first off is just building that trust with somebody. If you've been on a team with that crusty old person and they've, seen the value that you add to the team, they're much more likely to listen to you than if it's, your first day on the job, they've been there for 20, 30 years and you're saying, hey, we need to start working with the Jamstack. So, having that personal trust and relationship, I would say would be the most important thing there. And it's not going to be an easy battle. I would say trying to take it in smaller segments there, where by doing things like showing them maybe an example of a static site that is more similar to what they're used to and kind of the end result would be a good way to kind of bridge that gap. But it's probably something where you're going to have to handle those objections over and over again. And a lot of times I found in my experience doing sales is that persistence is key. Eventually you might get them to crack. If they end up using it and have a great experience with it, I think they're more likely to use it in the future.
Nice.
That's great insight.
Let's see. We got Ryan Bahan. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. Similar to the Tailwind example earlier, are there specific challenges you see in trying to sell something that's perceived as quote unquote too new?
Yeah, I think that kind of echoes to Nick's question there. I think folks that haven't had experience with it or just hear it come up from time to time, it's going to be a much tougher sale. I think somebody who fully understands it and kind of sees how the process works from start to beginning and what the end result looks like, it's going to be easier to do. With any new technology, framework, anything like that, you're always going to have people that are skeptical at first and people that are set in their ways. So again, I would say isolating their specific concern would be kind of the first step. What is it about working with the Jamstack that most concerns you? And kind of focusing in on that. If you just treat it as kind of a big cloud of they don't want to work with it, it's too new, you don't really have any routes to go there. But if you can ask further questions, open-ended questions, and really get them to isolate what that objection is, I think you have a much easier chance of showing and explaining and, getting them to see your point of view.
Nice. I actually have a question myself. So if someone is hesitant to fully diving into the entire Jamstack, do you think kind of like piecing in like different parts of like, oh, let's move our API to a serverless architecture, and then let's move our front end to something like Gatsby, like kind of piece by piecing it in, is a good approach?
Yeah, I don't think that can hurt. That's actually a great way of kind of thinking about it there, Zach, where, yeah, if you can maybe don't even let them know, hey, we're switching our entire architecture to a Jamstack site, but hey, this is a great API. It does all of these things that we've been doing, in the past here. Let's put this in. Hey, let's take a look at using a static site generator. Also you got Gatsby or Jekyll or whatever in there. And before you know it, even though they didn't really see it happening, more or less you're working with the Jamstack. So yeah, I think that's a good thought.
Nice. So Ryan Bahan actually had a follow up. He was also curious of a non-tech context that you've been able to sell something that was perceived as too new.
Um, yeah, I most recently I worked at a car dealership as a sales manager as well as a salesperson before that. So I think you see that a lot with technical features and kind of seeing, the almost like Nick was saying earlier, the crusty old person that it's been a little while now, but maybe something like eyesight technology that does automatic braking that's in vehicles nowadays, where I've had people come in and say, there's no way I'm going to use this. This isn't safe. I don't trust it. And then really kind of sitting down with them. Why isn't it safe? Why don't you trust it? What's the actual objection there? Again, kind of going back and isolating it, showing them different reasons and studies, and third party resources are always a great thing to use, where it's not just you saying that this is a reason, but if you have, X, Y, and Z also have documentation that it's worked and it's great in the past. Bringing in other people as well, if that's an option for you, is something that I've used in the past, where, I might say, hey, Ryan, if, you're working with me, Mr. Williams here is unsure about the eyesight technology. I know you were in the same boat beforehand, but you recently bought a Subaru that has it. What's been your experience? And kind of just having that kind of tag teaming there. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question, Ryan. Sorry, I kind of rambled a little bit.
That was good. That's just good, solid advice in general of finding good examples to kind of reason with them of, just trying to break down why they're questioning it and try to find them an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what it all kind of boils down to. If you really look at the objections of being just the lack of understanding, really taking the time and being patient, especially with somebody like that, is super important. To where if you're going to spend the time and help them break down, maybe there's a long list of barriers that you got through, but if you can take each of those one by one, that's really the only way you're going to get through.
Nice. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, but we'll give them a couple more seconds here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. Um, like I said, kind of at the beginning of your talk, and maybe even at the beginning of the meetup, I think this is a really important kind of conversation to have about selling the Jamstack, because I've heard lots of like, here's the cool stuff I've done with the Jamstack, here's how I can do things with the Jamstack. And that's really useful. But taking it up a level and being like, how do we actually convince people that this is good for them, is, I think, a really important conversation to have. And I appreciate you kind of laying that whole thing out from top to bottom. So I think it's really useful. I haven't seen any more questions come in, so
yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah. So, Dave, thank you so much. Thank you again for that talk. A big shout out to our other speaker, Doug Whitney. Also, I think Doug had to head out for the evening, so I appreciate him also coming by. So, Doug and Dave, thank you so much. Also, a huge shout out. I forgot to do this at the beginning. I'm not the only organizer here. We have our amazing technical person here, Zach Brooks, co-organizer. Nick Teets and Gabe Greenfield aren't on the call today, but they are hanging out with us in the chat, so thanks to them. Thanks again for coming out to Jamstack Denver. June, we'll be back again in July. Maybe in person, who knows? We're going to be safe about it. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
It's July 1st, I believe.
Yeah, I think our next one is July 1st. So it's less than a month away. So anyway, thanks again, everybody. And thanks, Dave. And thanks, Doug. And we will see you next time.
Bye.